Right. In the last class, we have started discussing what exactly the concept of process. Just a minute. Yeah, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I was clicked on a mute button. Now it is okay. Is it audible? Now is it audible? Okay. Right. So program counter, stack, data section, and heap. These are the four parts that every process can contain. Okay. So the text section contains the information whatever is currently being executed in it, or whatever the information that was loaded into that. That information will be present in this text section. And program counter, which maintains the address of the next instruction to be executed, just like it acts as a pointer which points to the address location which is going to be executed next by the CPU. And a stack which contains the information regarding the local variables, addresses, functions, because this all information is necessary for the CPU for the in order to complete the execution of your process. So data section contains the global variables, whatever the variables that you have declared as a global in your program, those will be represented in the data section. And a heap section contains whatever the dynamic memory that it was allocated in the the whole information is present in this heap section, right? So this is the diagram, a process in memory, what way it is represented in memory, right? And as I told you, these two are grown in the opposite directions. If they ever meet anywhere, so probably you may get the error like a stack overflow or insufficient memory for the memory allocation in a heap point of view. Okay, so definitely for a period of time they should meet somewhere so that everything will work successfully. All right. Now let us have a look at about the process life cycle. At any given point of time, a process should be in any one of these five states. Either it may be at a new, suppose this time if the process has created that state, we can represent it as a new. Some of the textbooks you may read it as a start state, right? Don't be confused. It depends upon the operating system which we are using. The names may be different, but you should understand the purpose of the state, what is happening in it, right? So once a process has created, it is in the state, new state. Okay. After that, once it acquires all the resources which are essential for it, it will be moved to the ready state. Okay. So the ready state process is waiting for the services of the CPU. Once it got a chance, the process is in, will become its state from ready to running state. So during the execution of your process, if your process needs the services of IO devices, what happens in that case? The execution of your current process is temporarily suspended and your process will be moved from running state to waiting state in order to get the services of IO device. So once it gets the services of IO device, it will be moved from waiting state to a ready state, because again, after completion of IO operation, again it needs to be executed by the CPU. So that is the reason after completion of the IO services, it will be changed its state from waiting to a ready state. Okay. During this time, probably the CPU may be busy with executing some other process. So once it was completed, uh, the CPU accepts this previously terminated one, and now it becomes running. Like that, the process will be repeated until the process has to be terminated. So once the execution of the process is over, you just imagine in your brain a program execution, right? You have a program in your, you are going to execute a program, a simple C program, okay? So that you can consider as a process. Initially, when you are typing something and you can start compiling a new process, your process is in the new state, okay? Once you compile all these things, so that what happens? Exe file will be created. Everything is ready. Now, when you press on running button, okay, then it will get a chance from the CPU for executing your program. Right? During the execution of the program, if you have any input-output statements, what happens in that case? CPU will, because input-output statements are, in order to complete the execution of the input-output statements, it need to, CPU need to utilize the services of IO device, because user input will be acquired from the input device, whereas the output will be displayed on the screen itself. So it is not the task of CPU. It is the task of hardware components which are connected to the system. So that is the reason, instead of wasting the time until the completion of this process, what CPU does is simply it suspends the current execution and it allows other process into the running state. Okay. So whatever the suspended process, suspension means temporarily it stops the execution of the process one. Okay, so it will be assigned to the IO devices. They will complete their task. After completion of these IO services, your process is changed its state from waiting to ready. Okay, and immediately CPU starts the continuous execution of the remaining statements of your program. So once all the statements are executed, then it will be entered into the terminated state. Okay, so at any given point of time, if you observe your process should be in any one of the state. So for this process, it will maintain certain queues like uh, probably the IO devices are currently being busy with some other tasks. Whenever if your task is suspended by the CPU. Once again, I'll repeat the time. IO device. So your process is at a running state. Your process requires the services of IO device. So for that purpose, what it does simply it suspends the execution and it will be redirected to the IO device. Okay. So at that moment, these IO devices may be busy with some other task. Okay. So that what happens? It need to be wait for a period of time. Where it need to be wait? So that the queue which it maintains for the device is called as device queue. It maintains a certain queue. Okay. So it should be this particular process should be wait in that particular state. I mean, sorry, queue, device queue. Like that, whatever the number of processes that requires the services of this particular one, services of IO devices, they should wait in the device queue. For example, if you want to use a keyboard, right? So at this moment, the keyboard is utilized by some other person. What you have to do, you need to wait for a period of time until its completion of the previous task. Okay. So in such a way, for each and every device, it maintains a queue where whatever the process that it requires the services of the particular device need to wait until it becomes free. Similarly, when a process is created, that should be placed in the a queue once it acquire all the resources are ready for execution. That is what we are call it as a process queue, or simply you can call it as a job queue. Because all the jobs which requires the services of CPU has to wait in a queue. And that is queue what we are calling it as a job queue. Okay. All right. So this is the process life cycle, right from the beginning to the ending of the process execution. So in order to process execute all the process, the operating system should maintain a data structure for each and every process. For each and every process is called as process control block, which contains certain parameters or the information regarding the process. This data structure is used for holding the information regarding the particular process. For example, just consider the same example, your program. Okay. Once it was started its execution, in order to identify it, it should have a unique number. That is what we are called it as a process ID or process number. Okay. Once it was started, it should be in any one of the 5 states. Previously, we have discussed the life cycle of the process. So, what will be the current state of this particular process is stored in this, right? Because it should be the system doesn't have any natural intelligence. Okay, so for that reason, it need to maintain the information regarding each and everything. So, as a part of recording the information regarding this particular process, it should maintain internally this particular data structure. Okay, so process state this particular field contains the information regarding what is the state of the process, whether it is running state or waiting state, etc., etc. And program counter, as I told you, it plays an important role in execution of any process, because once it was loaded into the stack, it contains the address of the top location where the address of the first instruction is to be executed. Or simply you can remember that program counter contains the address of the next instruction to be executed. Next instruction to be executed, right? So always, if it is the first instruction, what it contains? Yes, it contains the first instruction information. After that, it loads the second instruction information. Like that, it continuously record the address of your instructions. Instruction means a particular line in your program, first line in your program. You can imagine like that. It is an instruction. Okay? Because program means a set of instructions. Set of instruction means each and every line in a program you can consider it as an instruction. Okay, so for each and every line, address will be stored in the program counter in order to execute it on the CPU. So for processing all these things, it need to utilize some of the CPU registers. For example, you might have heard about accumulator, temporary register, right? General purpose registers. Like that, we have different types of registers are available, which are make utilized by the CPU in the computation itself. Okay, so whatever the registers that are used and the contents of the process-centric registers are maintained in the registers, even for your memory, right? And memory limits. What will be the total memory which is allocated for a process? Okay, and if accounting information like how much of time it was consumed by the CPU and all. Okay, and IO status information like IO devices allocated to the process, a list of files, this information. So like that, it maintains the complete information regarding the process. Okay, so it is also an important question in examination point of view. Explain about the process control block. Now, this is what way, how the CPU is going to be switched from one process to another process. Okay, so very soon we'll discuss elaborately about this shifting process, right? So now, let us look at about the process scheduling. This is very important. Process scheduling. So what do you mean by process scheduling? Scheduling means we need to plan how we are going to be executed, That is what we are called as scheduling algorithm. Here we'll have two different types of schedulings, long term and short term. Long term means just like the batch of, if you submit a batch of jobs, a bunch of jobs, 10 jobs you have submitted as a single group. What happens in this case? Continuously, the CPU will execute all these processes, right? There is no termination. Continuously, they are processing. You just imagine like that. Whenever if we have such kind of situation, that type of schedulings are called as the long-term scheduling. Even sometimes they are uncertain also, because some of them may be ended immediately, something will be started. Continuously, this process is going on. Okay, so such kind of scenarios are called as long-term scheduling. Short-term scheduling. Short-term scheduling means whatever we have discussed previously. That means once it was started execution, during the execution, if it needs the services of any other resource, immediately it suspends the current execution and CPU will redirect it to the desired resource. Okay, so such kind of a thing is happened in short-term scheduling. So some of the operating system, they'll support the medium size also. Medium size in the sense are not very long and not too short. Okay. So the objective of all these scheduling algorithms is, or this scheduling process, to make our CPU as busy, because this is only the place where we'll get all our tasks are getting executed. Okay, if we are able to make it busy, so that it can process n number of instructions at same time. So that what happens? So that within less amount of time, you are able to process more number of instructions, more number of processes, right? So that is the main object of this scheduling. For this, we need to define different policies, what way we are supposed to follow in order to maximize the utilization of the CPU. Okay, so here what you are supposed to think is what way we can maximize the CPU utilization. Okay, so why we need to think about this maximization part of the CPU is usually what happens whenever if one task is assigned to the CPU, what it does, it starts the execution of the task. Don't worry, task, job, process, interchangeably I'm using these three words. Okay, don't be confused, all of them are convey the same message, right? So a particular task is currently being executed by the CPU. It starts the execution. Okay, first instruction is executed, second instruction is executed, third and fourth instructions are related to the memory. So what it does, immediately it will be allocated to the memory device. Okay, what is the role of CPU at this moment? It has to wait until the memory device has completed its operation and return back to the CPU. Okay. Memory unit has completed its task and it was returned to the CPU. Now CPU continues its execution. After executing fourth and fifth lines, 6 and 7 lines are related to IO devices. Let us assume that if the situation is like this, what CPU has to do? It has to stop its execution and it will be redirected to the IO device. Just a minute. All of you please hold. Okay, sorry for the disturbance. All right. So, like that, the process is going on. Here, what I want to convey you is, in the olden days, that means before inventing the scheduling algorithms, as long as the job is executed in the CPU will look after only the particular job. That means during the execution of the job, if it needs the services of any other, so until completion of that those services, it has to wait. It should be in ideal state. There is no more alternative. Suppose what happens in that case? For example, let us assume that there will be a long job. There will be a very big job is currently being executed by CPU. In order to complete that job execution, suppose there are in that particular service requires a number of resources. Uh, Not like that. Let us assume that it is very big job. Probably took 1 hour of time for the completion. So during that time, until completion of that long job, no other job is being allowed to execute. Right? They have to wait. They have to wait until completion of this job. Okay. Even some emergency task is also be entered into the job queue. No way. There is no chance of getting executed. This kind of scenario, if you are following, that is what we are called it as first come, first serve scheduling. Whoever comes first, they will be processed first. Remaining people has to wait, right? Like that, whatever the mechanism that you have adapted to process or to execute all the processes is called as scheduling. So the main object of this scheduling is uh, the main object of the scheduling is will make our CPU is busy. Okay. All right. So now let us have a look at about what is the things that are related to this. Process scheduler selects among available processes for next execution on CPU. Okay. So process scheduler. The job of the scheduler is it need to pick one of the process which is available for the execution, which are ready. Simply you can imagine which are ready. Second one is it maintains the scheduling queues of the processes. One is job queue, ready queue. Job queue contains set of all the processes in the system, whereas ready queue contains set of all the processes residing in main memory and ready and waiting to execute. Okay, so the processes, whoever is created in the system is stored in job queue, and who acquire all the resources, okay, those all things will be placed in the ready queue. And as I told you, during the execution of the process, if it needs the services of any other resource, or simply you can imagine IO devices, for that, the particular process need to be resides in the device queue. Okay, so the process migrate among the various queues. So initially it is at job queue. Once it acquires all the resources, probably it will be changed to the ready queue. So during the execution, if it requires the services of any of the devices which are connected to the system, probably it may be placed in the device queue. So in such a way, it was migrated among all these queues. Okay. So you can have a look at this is what the queue. So it follows simply the doubly linked list structure. The process in the Linux environment will follow the doubly linked list, as you are aware of that. It will have both forward and backward direction of the accessibility. So here you can observe the ready queue. So head and tail, head is connected to the first one and the tail is connected to the last one, right? Similarly, the device, disk unit is 0, magnetic gravity memory device is 0, 1, and terminal. Terminal means some other device. In such a way, all these are connected, are placed in the particular queues, right? Now, let us see how the process is executed. A representation of process we're dealing in the form of diagram. So, once it was entered into the ready queue, if it is in job queue, there is no guarantee that a CPU will access directly. Okay, so whatever the jobs that are placed in the job queue will be moved into the ready queue after acquiring all the resources that are required for it. Okay, required to process it. Right. Once it was placed in the ready queue, now the CPU scheduler will pick one of these process which is available in the queue itself. For example, some X process is acquired. So during this execution of this X process, if it needs the services of IO device, what happens in this case? So temporarily suspends its execution, and whatever the current process that will be redirected to the IO device, right? So for that, in order to get the services of IO device, what it has to do, it need to wait in the IO queue. Okay. After completion of this IO services, again it will be placed in the ready queue, because the remaining part need to be processed by the CPU. So for that purpose, again it will be placed in the ready queue, right? The time slice, whatever the time that is allocated for this particular one, if it is expired, what happens in that case? The new slot has to be created. Okay, so for that purpose, for creation of the time slice, it will be redirected to this scenario, and once it was allocated with the new time slot, immediately it will be placed in the ready queue, right? So similarly, suppose if it is having some sub process, very soon we'll discuss about this child process and parent process. So until then, you just imagine it is a sub part of it. So if it requires any child process, that means the process which creates itself and another process in order to complete it. Okay, so if it requires such kind of scenario, it will be redirected to the creation process where it creates the child process, and then again it will be placed into the ready. Even for child process also, it need to maintain the process control block for it, because process control block contains the information regarding all the information regarding the process. So that is the reason for parent process as well as for the child process also it maintains a separate PCBs. Okay. So suppose if is there any other interrupt has occurred, okay, so that will be processed by on the begin. Whatever the interrupt that was occurred, it will be placed in the waiting state. So in such a way, during the execution of your process, if it requires any of these things, what happens in all these cases? Simply, temporarily it stops or simply it suspends its execution and it will be redirected to the corresponding. So once the corresponding device or corresponding other resource is completes its operation, again it will be moved to the ready queue. Okay, so this is about of the various queues which are used uh, by the various resources during the execution of your process. Right. So as I told you, short-term scheduler, long-term scheduler, and the process scheduler. So once again, we'll have a look at about it. Short-term scheduler, or simply CPU scheduler. So selects which process should be executed next and allocates the CPU. Okay. So simply you can pick a queue, a process from the ready queue. Sometimes the only scheduler in a system or the short-term scheduler invoked frequently because it was continuously, it is a process because as I was explained in the last slide, see, first job has picked from this and CPU starts its execution. A very first step is IO device. What happens in that case? Simply it suspends its execution and it picks the second one. Like that, after allocating the current process to the required resource, it won't be waited until its completion. Okay, so immediately it picks the next one or it allows the next one for the processing, right? Like that, it was repeated. So that is the reason the short-term scheduler is invoked frequently for every milliseconds, right? And long-term scheduler or just like the batch processing, or you can call it as a job scheduler. It selects which process should be brought into the ready queue. Right? So because it takes a lot of time, so that is the reason they were invoked infrequently. The long-term scheduler controls the degree of multi-programming, right? Like how many jobs have to be executed, multiple programs to be executed. Okay, that is will be decided by this long-term. So a process can be described either IO bound process or CPU bound process. This is very important point which everybody has to understand. IO bound process. It spends more time doing IO than computation. Many short CPU bursts. So if your program contains n number of input-output related lines or the instructions which requires the services of IO device, maximum lines are IO devices. That means if your program contains only printf and scanf statements, right? Maximum number of statements are printf and scanf. Then such kind of process is called as IO bound process because majority of the time it spends with the IO devices. So that's why this kind of process are called as IO bound process. Here you can observe many short CPU bursts. That means suppose if first two instructions are IO related, then what happens? CPU burst. That means CPU execution has stopped and it will be redirected to the IO devices. After executing those two statements, again it will be come back, right? Like that, whenever if your program contains n number of input outputs related statements, each and every time when it was appeared, immediately the current execution being stopped and it was redirected to the IO devices. So this kind of continuous termination and rejoining, termination and rejoining, this kind of processes exist. That is what we are called as CPU bursts, right? So IO bound processes are the processes which spends more amount of time with IO devices than CPU is called as IO bound process. Vice versa. CPU bound process spends more time doing computation, very few long CPU bursts. That means only one or two input output related step. In that case, what happens? The whole process resides in the CPU. That means CPU continuously executes your job only without any burst, without any termination, right? Long-term scheduler strives for good process mix. Okay, these are the two different types of processes. Process can be described in any one of these two ways. Now, this is a medium-term scheduling. Medium-term scheduling can be added if the degree of multiple program needs to decrease. As I told you in the previous slide itself, the long-term scheduler controls the degree of multi-programming. If you want to decrease it, you can go with the medium scheduler. Now let us see what is happening in this medium scheduler. So it removes the process from memory, store on the disk, bring back in disk from the disk to continue execution. So rather than from the storage area, from the memory, it fetches the information. It keeps the information on the disk. Whenever it wants to, or whenever it continues its execution, it will be bring back from the storage disk itself. Right? Let us have this process with the help of the diagram. So once it was placed in the ready queue, it starts its execution. Okay. So during that, if it needs the services of any other devices, it will be placed in it, right? So here the swap out means it will be redirected to the, or it allows the other device for the process. Okay. So what happens? Sorry, due to internet connectivity, it was disconnected. Right. So first one job is accepted from the ready queue. The CPU starts its execution. During the execution of the first job, if it requires the services of in IO devices, immediately it was redirected. So once it was redirected, it again allows the next process 2 will be allowed for the execution on the CPU. That is what we are calling as swap out. Before going to move or before going to allow this second process for execution, it needs to record some information regarding storing and restoring of information regarding this process one. Because whatever the last instruction that it was executed, what are the registers that are used for that execution of that particular instruction, this whole information need to be recorded because again it will be come back for the execution. Okay, once it come back for the execution, at that moment it need to restore the whole information previously where it was stopped. So for that purpose, it maintains the information is stored somewhere about this process one. Okay, so because of the IO services, process one has suspended and it was allocated to IO device. Okay, at that moment, instead of waiting until completion of this, it allows the process two for the execution, right? Uh, it continues with the process, I mean, second process. During the execution of the second process, if the first process interrupts the CPU, like I have completed my IO services, now I am ready for the execution. What happens in that case? Again, it suspends the process two and it allows process one for continues its execution by restoring the addresses and all where it was stopped previously. Okay, so like that, the process is going on even in the medium term schedulings, right? So this is about scheduling process. I'll show you another part. Just a minute. Yeah, now let us see how the switching is happened between one process and another process. Okay, so now initially the process P0 is executing, right? So during that time, for example, this process is requires the services of IO device or any other memory device or XYZ. Okay, at that moment, it interrupts our system call. I mean, how do we stops its execution with the help of this system call? Okay, and then whatever the current state of this process will be stored in the PCB, right? So whatever the current state, what is the current next instruction to be executed, okay, and what are the registers that are currently being used by this process, this whole information is recorded in the PCB. Okay, after recording all these things, it reloads or it starts the execution of the process 1. Previously, the CPU is busy with process 0. Once it was suspended, it allowed the process 1 for the execution. It reloads all the information of this PCB because PCB is created at the time of initially and continuously it was updated during the execution of the process. Okay, so it starts the execution of this process 1. It continues its execution. Once the process 1 has completed a task, immediately it makes an interrupt with the system call. So before terminating this process 1 or before suspending this process 1, what it has to do? It has to update the process control block of this process 1 where it is going to stop, right? So after recording all this information again, it reloads and start from the PCB0. That means whatever the information that you have previously saved in the PCB0, that means process control block of process 0, the whole information again will be reloaded and then it starts the execution of the remaining task. So in such a way, the process, I mean, the switching process is happened in the CPU switching process, right? Hope you're all clear with this point, right? This is the structure of a process in the Linux environment. As I told you, it was represented in a doubly linked list format. 583, 583. Do you have any query?
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Sir.
Right. So this is the way how the process is represented. Different processes are represented in the Linux environment. You can see the code here also. Process ID, the state of the process, okay, time slice, that is scheduling environment, task structure, parent process, child process, okay, list of files. This is in the form of a structure, struct. Struct keyword is used for defining the structure in C language, right? So these are all are represented as a structures. So like this, the process is represented in the Linux environment. Okay, so that is about introduction to the process scheduling. Hope you are all clear with this point. Okay, if you have any queries, you can ask.